Hey, if you like Ultralife today, and by the way, thanks for the explosive growth that we're experiencing, please do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome back to Ultralife Today. Having an engaging conversation with Kevin Marshall of Indigo Acres. Kevin was just sharing with us the difference between dirt and soil, which he described as its own ecosystem, and every fistful of this stuff that you pull up out of the ground that can have billions of different organisms, microbes, things working within that, fungi, all kinds of stuff to make that soil that can produce food that is actually healthy for you, that actually regenerates your health and doesn't take away from your health. Kevin, it's so exciting to have you here. Now, we were talking a little bit about chemicals and how they basically just turn true soil into dirt that's pretty much worthless other than producing something that looks good to the eye but doesn't do much at all for our health. So give me an idea of this. Okay, you're not using chemicals. The first thing that goes through my mind is, oh my God, you're going to be overrun with pests. You're going to be overrun with blight and plagues and different things like that. I know there's this concept, you use the word cover crops. Tell us about cover crops. Tell us why what you're doing allows you to weather the storm, so to speak, of these critters that everybody else is spraying chemicals to get rid of.
Well, if you think a cover crop is basically a crop that covers the ground. Bare soil gets radiated by the heat and the sun, and that basically makes a crust. If you walk around uncovered ground, it's just a crust.
Yeah, here in Oklahoma with the wind, too.
Yeah,
oh, my
and then
goodness.
that crust, when it then hits significant rain, it erodes and you lose all the stuff. So the cover crop is basically protection. It's like a sunscreen. But at the same time, over millions and billions of years, the earth has been growing cover crops that then break down, decompose, and become organic matter, which is a gardener's gold.
Loaded with all those beasties you were talking about that are good beasties, right?
Yes, so that's feeding this soil, feeds the microbes. They get chewed down, eaten up, and spit back out and recycled in the soil to become smaller and smaller parts to become nutrients. So cover cropping is what we do to regenerate the soil.
Okay, so how does that translate into not having to use pesticides and chemicals to try to get rid of insects? It almost sounds like you've got a welcome sign that says, Indigo Acres, we want insects, we want other things in this ecosystem. How does that work?
Sometimes we feel like we have a welcome sign, especially in the summer when our neighbor's property is brown. All the grasshoppers see this big green thing, and it's kind of like free buffet.
Oh, exactly. It's like, I remember that. You know, somewhere in my DNA as a grasshopper, I remember when it was like that.
One of the things in healthy soil that's not dead and depleted is a bacteria called BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a natural pesticide. So in our soil, we have pesticides. Nice. So when you get healthy soil, you get a little bit of natural stuff. We do supplement with sprays of BT, of bacteria.
Oh, nice.
And we also use certain oils. Neem oil, which is a skincare product, is used to...
Ayurvedic medicine.
Yeah, we spray it on our lettuce, and it stops the grasshoppers from eating. It puts them into a coma.
That's astonishing, without doing anything to the good, healthy food you're growing, right?
Right.
That's amazing.
So we first start with the healthy soil. And the plants, when they're healthier, they resist pests, and they resist diseases. So creating healthy plants is the first thing.
So a question came up in my mind. How long does it take to turn dirt into soil like you have at Indigo Acres? What is that process of is it years? What happens? How does it work?
So there's different ways and different costs. The quickest way is adding significant amount of compost. Compost is broken down organic matter, grasses or wood chips or different manures that have decomposed into a process. And you can pour this in to add that to an acre can literally cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
But you can do that quickly. You can add a couple inches of compost, increase the organic matter, stop tilling, stop spraying the chemicals, and you can build your soil back up rapidly and begin growing in a very short amount of time. But that's also not real profitable. The cover cropping can take about a year to establish, and we've done both. We've built a plot, smaller plots with compost. We built a plot with the cover cropping. The cover cropping takes a little longer, but it's a whole lot cheaper.
Nice. And so the goal ultimately is to wean oneself away from ever having to add your own compost, right? You actually want to make this to where this ecosystem is regenerating itself without you having to bring a whole lot of other stuff in. Is that right?
That would be the perfect world.
That'd be the optimal
we
world.
still do both. We make our own compost.
Oh, nice.
And to reduce the cost. But at the same time, while we're growing our crops, we're not doing a good job of growing the cover crop, so we can supplement with compost in between a planting. Then there's a period like right now we're not growing quite as much in the summer. We got some cover crops growing. They'll be cut back in before we do our fall cropping. So we rotate that in, but there are times that we do supplement with compost.
And what is a cycle for a harvest of some of the things that you mentioned to me, like beets and carrots and stuff? When you put that seed in the ground, how long is it before you're at the farmer's market?
So it kind of depends on a lot of different things. We do transplants. We start them indoors in a germination chamber, and we have a tool that we can transplant a few thousand beets in about 10 minutes.
Awesome.
And it jump starts it, and from there it becomes about 50 days before we go to the market. Same with the lettuce. We start it indoors, and it can be 30 to 45 days to take it to market.
Wow, 50 days. That's just not a long time, is it?
Yeah, if we did a direct seed, that can be increased time, and it takes, if we direct seed to the beets, it might be more like 70 days to get it to market.
And how do you make your own compost? What are you using to do that? And how much of that can you produce to kind of jumpstart or assist what you're doing?
So it depends on I mentioned earlier we have 2.5 acres, but we're only growing food on about an acre. We have 1.5 acres that we grow grass and lawn clippings, and so we bag that up, put it in a pile.
Perfect.
We find tree trimmer guys that dump their wood chips. We mix the carbon with the nitrogen and let it sit, turn it, and make our own compost.
So I was blown away when I was listening to this interview of these guys that produced a couple of documentaries that, I think one of them's free on Netflix called Kiss the Ground. I had never in my life equated the lack of rain and the weird weather that we have in our environment with someone actually taking what is now dirt and turning it into soil. And I was watching these things that to me were miraculous, how a guy would say, now look at my neighbor's stuff over here. Look at me. Oh, and by the way, we have a lot of regular rain. On their thousands and thousands of acres, they don't. And I was like, what? This is like, dates back into Aboriginal practices. And it's like, it's not witchcraft, is it?
It looks like magic, but
right?
It's not witchcraft, yeah. So
you're doing what with the carbon? So there's all these people, sequester carbon. We need to figure out a way to sequester carbon. Tell me what's happening in real soil.
Yeah, so what's happening, and when I started Indigo Acres, we started looking at how much water we're going to have to irrigate it. And it's like, wow, this is a lot of water. Maybe we need to collect rainwater. So I started looking at rain collection systems and tanks. And it's like a big tank with X number of cost. I could store 10,000 gallons of water. And then I started doing the math, and I needed to irrigate something like 250,000 gallons of water in a season.
Wow.
I'm like, I can't afford that.
That's not happening.
And then I came across a Google article that said if you can increase the organic matter on 1 acre of land, you can store an additional 60,000 gallons of water in your soil.
Brilliant.
So we've done soil tests. We've increased our organic matter by 3%. So we're actually storing more water in that real healthy soil with organic matter. It's like a sponge. It holds on to it longer. And that's what you're seeing on the documentaries. The one guy that's done regenerative farmer and cover cropping, and they've added organic matter and different things versus dead soil that's erosion. The one stays green because he's shielding it or it doesn't dry out, and 2, he's holding more water in a storage tank called the earth.
What's the difference between tilling the soil, which we've all seen growing up in every, social studies book I had, they had the big John Deere International Harvester things in there that are just cutting these deep grooves in the soil. And what's the difference between that and what you do when you've got a cover crop, you actually have real soil going on? You're not cutting big, deep holes in the earth, are you? What are you doing?
So we have a couple of different techniques. Once we grow the cover crop, we run it across what's called a flail mower, which is mulching mower in essence. Creates this very fine, broken down residual material that lays on the ground. We then cover it we water it, and we cover it with a tarp, depending on the season, for anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. And that breaks down basically compost on that. Pull the tarp off. All the weeds and grasses that were growing there have died. Seeds that were there germinate and they die. We pull it off and have this nice brown, lush soil that we plant into.
And I noticed on one of these documentaries that they said, oh, no, you can get these regenerative farming tools from the big boys that are out there just like you can others. And some of these machines I'd never even seen before, where it's just barely kind of breaking the surface of the soil that they were dragging across. It seems so much easier, too, to do that than what they were doing before. Yeah,
the large regenerative farms that are maybe 100 acres or 600 acres, they have the large machinery that they cut and leave the mulch on the ground, and then have what's called a drill where it pushes the seed past the mulch and theirs grows up in that. What we do is what's called tilthing, which is just scratches the surface to break up the top 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, whatever depth I set it, to make a nice soft seed bed. So when we put stuff in, it's a nice soft seed bed. The life that we're talking about earlier exists from 3 inches and below. So we scrape the top of the surface, plant our crops into that, and then all the life below starts feeding our stuff in the top inch.
So I remember for years and years when people started getting on the vegetable bandwagon and eat a rainbow kind of thing, people started buying more and more produce at the store, probably not realizing anything about the difference between dirt and soil and the different nutritional values. You know, I think when you go to a store and it says, contains X amount of vitamin C, I always think to myself, yeah, how many decades or hundreds of years ago did it actually have that amount of vitamin C in it, or vitamin D, or vitamin A in it? Do people ever test the difference between what comes off a shelf and what comes off of Indigo Acres ground to say, oh, this is loaded with antioxidants and good things, and this that looks like a tomato or a carrot, it's not? Do people do those kind of tests?
That technology is coming very fast. There's a nonprofit organization that's created this spectrometer type thing that can actually take the food sample slices and determine nutrients within it.
I love it.
And it's based on a pattern. So they have to develop that pattern for all of the different stuff. Right now they've got a pattern for carrots, and a pattern for certain things. So they're working on that. When I first heard about it, I went out and tried to figure out how to buy one of those, because I wanted to show my stuff. It's not available for sale yet, but it's in development.
It's getting there. I'm so glad to hear that.
The tests from that nonprofit have shown that the true organic regenerative farmings do have higher nutrients. And that's why the food tastes better from those farms. So,
not to mention all the other unidentified things. There's thousands upon thousands of phytochemicals in any given vegetable or fruit that you have that they haven't even been able to scratch the surface on what those are really doing for our health, that are there in abundance in this real food that you're producing at Indigo Acres. That's so cool. So I'm curious, did you gain friends, lose friends, or have a whole new community of people when you got out of IT work and started getting your hands dirty and started bringing fresh foods and stuff to market? I mean, how have you been received by friends in the community at large?
It's a whole new community. There's a lot of people that are still waiting for my phase to be over. Some of them are family members that
no
were
doubt.
Questioned my, how mentally competent I was by walking away from
one of my favorite phrases, Jesus said, the prophet is without honor in his hometown, meaning your own family is going to be the ones that pick at you the hardest on these things, right?
Yeah. So a lot of our former friends, while they're still out there, they're not our customers. We've got a new community. The community in the Edmond area has been very open to us. That once they finally learned what our function was, that we're about healing food. While we're doing this, we have to make money. All of our customers know we're not getting rich, at least not this way. So we're doing it for the food of the healing medicine, and our customers love us.
Have you noticed something? I'm just curious. It's just one of those questions I didn't even anticipate asking you. Have you noticed something in the last 3 or 4 years that those individuals that maybe weren't your friends, that didn't ever buy your food, are now going, maybe there's something to what Kevin and Robin Marshall are doing out there at Indigo Acres. Are you finding people are beginning to take health into their own hands, and you're seeing new faces that want to eat healthy?
Yeah, we are. Within our own friends community, we're seeing some of that, but also a lot of people are coming out going, hey, I thought I was healthy and I'm not. You know, one of my best friends who's a martial arts instructor, who's very physical, he's got problems with high blood pressure and different things. And so he's starting to do that. He came by our farm last week, picked up a couple of bags of food. So yes, we're seeing that. We're excited about that. Is there enough of that? No. There still needs to be a ton of education on that food can be medicine. So we're just barely scratching the surface of what should be happening.
Well, keep your passion. You're making a difference in getting attention, in getting people's attention like you've gotten mine. When you go from your farm to somebody's table, is there a degradation? You know, I've taken, as a test, I've taken certain vegetables to my house, especially tomatoes, from stores that said they were organic. And 40 days later, at room temperature, that tomato still hasn't rotted. Makes me feel like there's something wrong there. So does anything change from when you take food out of the ground to when it hits somebody's table? And how quickly do vegetables and things like that deteriorate, lose nutritional value? Is there special storage conditions? What do you do there?
Yeah, yes to all the above questions.
Okay.
Early on, we learned spinach is one of the products we grow, and I was researching the nutrient value of that, and I came across an article by Penn State University where they showed in 8 days from the time of harvest, spinach degrades its nutrient value by 40%.
Whoa.
So I started looking at the food supply chain from growing it in California or Washington and going to a warehouse and getting packaged and going to another warehouse and being shipped across the country to a warehouse, to a grocery store, to a shelf.
Yep.
That can't happen in 2 days, 3 days. So a lot of those leafy greens are anywhere from 10 to 14 days old when they hit the grocery store.
Yep.
Broccoli is another one that loses a lot of value. But yes, the processes of washing, packing, what time of day we harvest when we do our greens, we do it early in the morning before the sun hits it, because if it's sitting in the sun, that degrades. We take it, and we've invested significantly in our post-processing area, where it's put in cold water and then it's put straight into a large refrigeration. We've got 2 walk-in refrigerators at our house. Normally don't have that at your house. But those are the kind of things, and we keep it at a certain humidity. So yeah, we do everything we can from the time we cut that to the time we get it to the customer. And we try to educate the customer on what to do at that point too. But yeah, we do everything we can to get that to your table,
preserve that. That's awesome.
And the local part of the food is we can get it to you quicker.
Well, yeah, there's organic, and then there's organic, and then there's Indigo Acres Farms organic. Tell us this different, and what is the standard out there, and how much does it vary, and what difference does that make in the quality of food that's showing up at a local farmer's market that we're buying?
Sure. So when you see certified organic, that's kind of like a building code. It's a minimum standard, but you can build a building much stronger than the minimum standard. So organics is going to guarantee that chemicals aren't used, that it's doesn't have GMO type processing, and it meets a certain standards. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they've added all of the nutrients to the soil. So getting to meet a local farmer and talking to him and asking him, what are you doing? What products are you using? How are you growing your food? You're probably going to be able to find a better quality product. Besides it being local and fresher, you'll get a better feel for how they do it and find out the good farms that you want to get your food from. And
I'm assuming that on your website, you probably tickle people's ears enough to know that when you're looking at us, we're not just making it barely across the finish line. We're doing that go the extra mile thing as it relates to what we're offering you to eat for your family.
Right. Yeah. From day one, we have been that way from the beginning. We always did that.
Excellent.
It actually was a revelation when I first started looking at organic fertilizers when we were starting out. It hit me. I was trying to read the difference between this product and that product of what was in it. And one of them, I started reading the 65 nutrients that were in it. It sounded like a vitamin pill. Manganese, magnesium, calcium, copper, boron, zinc. I'm like, my vitamin pills don't have that much nutrients in it. And I'm like,
they don't.
Oh, if we don't put it into the soil, where the plant's going to get it.
Yeah.
So a certified organic farm, I'm not knocking them because many of them may be doing a great job.
Right.
They may be using the cheap fertilizer to meet the minimum standard. So unless you meet your farmer, your local farmer, and find out what they're doing, find out their growing practices, you really can't quite sure if you got the nutrient value you're looking for. So
no, I think
local
that's
is
great.
good.
So along those lines, do you ever have people that just come knock on your door, or do you like do some teacher in a classroom says, hey, I'm so blown away by what they're doing out at Indigo Acres. I want to bring a bunch of kids out there and stuff. Do you do things like that so that you can just have these unique little touch points and educational opportunities in your local community that raises the kind of awareness of what you're doing that's so different than what other people are doing?
Absolutely. We do scheduled tours. I
Nice.
like to use the word scheduled to
Absolutely,
call us
yeah.
first. We have
Right.
occasionally had a person show up that, hey, we know you guys wanted a tour. And we're like, well, we're walking out the door right
Right.
now. Well, can I
Yeah.
get a quick tour?
No.
It's going to be real quick. See the farm, let's go.
Right. Take your camera, do this, get on our website,
We like
learn about us.
classrooms. We like teachers bringing their kids out because we get a chance for them to see where their food comes from. So we do highly do that, and we walk through the farm. And I do that with other beginning farmers too.
Nice. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I want to bring something back up that you mentioned because I don't want it to go over people's heads. Number one, my heart tells me, and with the technology that's coming forward in the future, where you can prove the difference between something that's grown on dirt versus something that's grown on healthy, live, active ecosystem soil, we'll be able to prove that soon and say to people, see, here's the difference. But I don't want people to forget. You mentioned some things on some basic things, just like spinach. By the time it hits the store, it could easily be 40% less in nutrient value just of certain things they may be looking for, not to mention all the things that are there that they're not even looking for, right?
Right. Yeah, I've tried to find really good research on that, and a lot of
tough,
that
isn't it?
it's hard to find that. So a lot of that is faith that we're growing food the way God has been growing food for a million years,
Exactly.
and that we're getting back to the
Exactly.
basics. And we didn't have health issues for thousands and thousands of years. So we know that we're doing everything we can, and we're constantly learning and improving on that. But every time we improve on our soil, our food tastes better. And I believe those nutrients is doing that. So we have customer after customer that comes to us every week and says, oh, your stuff tastes so good. Your lettuce is so good. Your carrots are the best tasting. And to me, that just says, okay, we're doing something right in our soil. We're putting it in there. So
Yeah, people have no idea that minerals and enzyme-rich soil go right up into that vegetable that you're growing, and it completely changes the way it tastes. To me, it's the difference between bleached table salt and pink Himalayan salt. It's loaded with all these minerals that actually enhances the flavor of the food, and you've got that built in to your stuff. It's amazing. One of the things that really got me excited when I was plowing through these documentaries and learning about regenerative farming was I've always thought to myself, how in the world are we going to make this transition to even many larger farms? Not to mention, you mentoring individuals on a local level, smaller farms, people doing what you're doing, maybe on an acre of land, a half acre of land in their backyard. But I always thought to myself, but these farmers that are out there getting government subsidies, they can't even survive without the government subsidies. They'll have to close their farm down, but none of them are going to wait 10 years to certify their farm organic or whatever. And then I'm learning of these compressed times, like you mentioned, doing certain things to very quickly get the dirt moving from dirt to soil. And then all of a sudden, I'm hearing this guy that's out there teaching all these big agri-farmers saying, oh, yeah, and did you know that you can make this much more money as a rancher per acre or this much more money as a farmer? I looked at that and I almost fell on my knees and thanked God, because I thought this will actually put the hook in their mouth and get them to be willing to look at this. And I was hearing farmers that farmed 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 acres. I did the quick math in my head. It's like, oh my gosh, they're creating generational wealth for their kids by bringing in $500,000 more a year than they were doing it the other way, and not providing a really good product that's going to generate health and generate an ecosystem where it rains more and you're sequestering carbon. I mean, I was blown away. Tell me a little bit about this idea that you can actually make more money by doing it God's way. That just blows my mind, but it makes perfect sense.
So I could probably speak on that for about 6 hours.
I love it.
You're about to
We'll
get
have
into
you
my
back
passion.
for 6 hours.
Well, maybe not, but we'll try to cover that. So you mentioned the word subsidies, and I'm going to try not to get on my soapbox. A lot of the conventional farming almost depends on subsidies to survive because the value of their food just isn't as good. It takes a lot more nitrogen chemicalized fertilizer to make the corn grow, and this thing and these sprays and Roundup to kill this, and because they've depleted the soil, they have to keep adding these chemicals to make it grow, and there's a cost with all of that. So the regenerative soil basically creates this healthy ecosystem where the plants grow better. A quick statistic that I have, being a business background, I know how much each of my product makes. When we have what we call a bed of produce, it's 100 feet long, 30 inches wide. So I know every bed is 250 square feet. So when I harvest something, we know how much we harvest.
Nice.
When we first started harvesting our lettuce, we were getting about 80 pounds per bed. Benchmark from a guy I learned from in Tennessee, he said he was getting 130 pounds a bed. So over time, my production went up.
Beautiful.
This year on a bed that we just spent, or a plot that we just spent a year cover cropping, we got over 200 pounds a bed.
Oh my gosh. You were talking 80 pounds a minute ago.
80 pounds. Then I was getting my 130 pounds.
That.
Now I'm into 200 pounds on a bed. And when you turn that to sales, that is revenue.
Yeah.
And I didn't do anything different. We put down this other than a cover cropping for a year, we just made our soil healthier, and our profits on that 250 square feet went from what was okay to something that was phenomenal.
Wow, that's almost like a slot machine. I mean, you're putting a certain amount of money in, and this year, you get 10 cents or 15 cents back on that dollar, and then all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5 years later, you're getting 2.5 times that amount. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah, we're excited about what's coming in.
Nice.
Every time I see that improvement, I go buy more cover crop seed. I'm like, why? Let's make the soil even healthier.
Well, in the world we're living in today, people, everybody's watching their money. Everybody's watching a dollar. And I just think it's fantastic. As I was watching these farmers, I was like, now there's motivation for them to turn that dirt into soil. And at the same time, it's stimulating the economy. It's producing more money. It allows them to potentially look at new things, other things, newer interests that are totally tied to regenerative farming. Are people learning anything new? Is there nothing new under the sun, or really are you just looking back at the way people did it back then and said, why did we mess this up the way we did? And let's just go make it simple again. Is it that way, or are you really learning new things even within the regenerative world?
Both. It can be just that simple, and I've kind of taken that approach. It's like, I know what I need to do. I don't have to get very scientific about it, but as I refine it to get that next 5%, and the next 3%, and the next thing, those are where I can start doing things. I can take soil tissue samples out of the tomato plants to see if the nutrients are right, and that can improve my tomato production. So you can get very, very precise.
Nice.
But you can also just make it very simple and just grow it the way God and people have grown it for thousands and thousands a year, just nice and simple.
So how in the world do you develop relationships to, I'm thinking of, I'm much more of a marketing guy. I'm the world's worst salesman. I remember somebody finally saying, you just have to ask for the sale. And I was actually helping build the company Ultra Botanica at the time. And one of Adam's best friends that believed in our products, I thought, I'm not going to be myself for the day, and I'm going to ask for the sale. And he goes, no. I was so rejected, because for me, it's all about the passion, the enthusiasm, the conviction that I'm doing something right, that's changing people's lives and helping people. I'm so glad to hear that you're saying there's these little tweaks and new innovations, things you can learn along the way, trading ideas maybe with other people that know a little more than you, which is awesome. Have you ever, what's the gratification for you? Was there any time where you're hitting these walls as you're doing this and changing your life, and you've just, gotten your hands dirty, and it's not perfected yet. What kind of feedback have you actually gotten from people along the way that is like, that's what makes it worth it for me to get up? Can you think of any particular story or anything that happens to you at a farmer's market or something when people come up that it's like, that's why I'm doing this?
It happens every year.
Wow.
Every year, and it never gets old. Recently, we currently have people that order online, pick up at the farm. And I've had a customer that's been coming out for a few years, and she brings her adopted son out to help do the pickup. And we had strawberries this year, and our strawberries were to die for. They're just so sweet and so tasty. And
yes,
they picked up their.
I'm going to keep you and Robin on my speed dial and keep going. Any strawberries? I know, because that's not one of your major crops, right?
Right. And it's very seasonal. So they picked this up, and they had some strawberries, and they headed out to their car, and another customer was in there, and all of a sudden she came back in with them and said, "Can you tell Farmer Kevin what you just told me?" And I'm like, "Is this kid in trouble? What did he say?" And he goes, "That was the best strawberry I've ever had in my entire life.
I finally tasted what a real strawberry is supposed to taste like."
And
that's awesome.
To see him excited about eating something healthy,
right.
That's what feeds me.
Yeah.
As to know, maybe I've touched this next generation. Don't know what he's going to do. Maybe he'll be a farmer. Maybe he'll support local farms. Somewhere his life is going to be changed because of that strawberry.
Yeah, well, I'm going to preach for a second to parents and grandparents out there. You just heard this really cool story, but can you imagine the way it's going to change your children's and your grandchildren's health if you begin to introduce them to food that literally will regenerate their body? It will actually taste so good that they'll want to eat it, and you're not going to have to try to force them to eat that strawberry or that vegetable or whatever. They're going to want to do it. So I hope you're getting a lot of inspiration from this. It's pretty amazing. We're gonna transition in this next segment to talking about how in the world did Kevin Marshall begin to get pipelines into farmers markets, and then how did that end up evolving into you going back to what I heard you say right when you started doing it. And it's like, I'm going to have to duplicate myself. I've got to feed this flame, and my passion needs to be planted in other people's lives, because there needs to be more Kevin Marshalls, more Indigo Acres out there. So you're listening to Kevin Marshall, Indigo Acres. You can get a hold of him, indigoacresok.com. I'm Josh Bellieu. This is Ultra Life Today. Hey, you like what we're doing? Like, subscribe, share.